Hey, welcome to the Profit Builder video series. I'm Vicki Suter, your host, and I'm the author of the book, The Profit Bleed, How Managing Margin Can Save Your Contracting Business. And these videos are all about helping you grow a more sustainably successful contracting business. And for over 25 years, I've been helping contractors increase their profits, generate more time in their day, and reclaim and refine the joy in what they do again. And that's what this video series is all about. And my goal is to help give you the thinking to be able to understand how to do that in your business. And then I actually give you tools and resources that help you implement what it is the video is talking about. So I hope you enjoy today's Profit Builder video.
Everybody that's listening to this, welcome to Remodelers on the Rise. I'm Kyle Hunt, and I have a VIP guest, very important person, Vicki Suter. Vicki, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody.
And I'll introduce Vicki in a little bit, but I said, Vicki, we're going to just dive right in. I'm going to go on a little not a rant, but a little bit of a way to throw us into this topic. Not kind of wade into it, but throw us into it. Yesterday, two distinct conversations I had with remodelers across the fruited plains. And I say that because literally it was East Coast and West Coast, these two clients. And the majority of both of these coaching calls were focused on challenges they were having with key employees on their team. And both of them tied in with it not just being that person, but there being an overall cultural challenge in the business. Just an overall, the culture, there's us versus them going on. There's hurt feelings. There's infighting between different people on the team. And we were working through that. We were strategizing through that. How do we handle it? And then the second part of the conversation, I said it with both clients. I said, managing people is so hard. It's hard work. And both of these remodelers are growing their business. They've gone from, kind of being by themselves and then building a team and continuing to build a team. And their role and their success in business is so much more weighted on managing a team and leading a team well compared to it used to just be, I'm going to go and do some work and do a great job for clients. Now they're business owners. They're managing teams. So the topic we're going to dig into today is creating a culture that attracts and retains great people. And we're going to focus on that culture. We're going to focus on that retains great people. And if you're a business owner, if you're a remodeler listening to this topic, while rarely talked about compared to sales process and marketing, I would argue is probably just as important, if not more important than any other topic that you have. So I was kind of serious, Vicki.
Well, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, I empathize, and I hear this a lot in terms of your clients and the story that you're sharing with that struggle of I have something that I do that I really love, and I start a business, and then I start to add people to my team as my business is growing, and I don't have that same expertise at managing people as I do in the technical part of whatever it is that my business is about. And so I appreciate the struggle. It's like it's having to learn to exercise a whole new muscle that we're not used to. And, and there's just a lot of I don't know what I don't know for a lot of business owners and leaders about how to grow great teams and how to build a culture that really does attract those right people, because those are two different things.
Yeah. So let's start with that culture part. The culture. Have we been thinking about the culture of our business? What are we building here? What are we about? So I'm going to leave that kind of open-ended, and people don't know what they don't know, but they're about to know some of what your brilliance knows. And we're going to why don't we talk a little bit about culture? So when you think of company culture, and I'm thinking of specifically a remodeling company, what do they need to be thinking about related to this topic? What can they be doing to drive culture? Share some of your thoughts on that. And I probably won't interrupt you too much, but I might interrupt you if you say something that I want you to dive into more.
Yeah, feel free. So when I think about culture, it's an interesting word because depending on who you talk to, sometimes people get this thought in their mind of culture is I have a mission statement and I have a vision statement. And I think that those things are important. But really, when I think about culture, I think about what is the environment that you create that people work in and day out. And is the environment one where people feel like they know how to win the game with you? They know how to be successful. They're clear about how, for them, how to be successful and how to do their job well. That there's clear and open communication, that there's not that wondering and guessing about, am I doing a good job or am I doing a bad job? And is there consistency in the way that we do things? Or is it different every time? Is it sort of I've worked in environments before where it's like the flavor of the week, we're going to do it this way now, but then everybody forgets about it and 2 weeks later it's something different when the owner or the manager has some new great idea about how they're going to do it. So when I think about culture, I think about what's the environment that we create that allows somebody to be successful at doing their job. And those elements are, are we clear with people about what that job is? Do we have job descriptions or what I call position agreements clearly defined that say, here's the results that you're expected to produce, so that we're on the same page? And oftentimes, I'm going to dig into this a little bit because the whole thing about position agreements or job descriptions is that when I ask people about that, oftentimes what it is it's a list of tasks. And what you do in having a list of tasks is you create helpers. You don't create people who actually take ownership with you. And then what happens is that you have people who are very dependent on you as a manager or business owner in a remodeling business to have to always be dependent on you to know what to do next. And that creates this whole thing of the thing that you talked about that makes it hard to manage people and to produce consistent results, is because you haven't actually told people how to win the game with you and what's the result you're after, as opposed to what's the task they need to do. So that's a really critical element of building a culture where people, where great people want to work, because when the people on your team are super clear about how to win the game with you, they're clear about how to be successful at their job, they're clear about the results, there are a number of things that happen for us as human beings. One is we have a greater sense of belonging and mattering and contribution in what we do. And fundamentally, as human beings, for everybody walking the face of the earth, I don't care who you are or what you do in your job every day, whether you're out in the world doing a job or at home doing a job, our fundamental desire is to have a sense of belonging, mattering, and contribution. We want to feel like there's purpose in what we do. And if
what were those three again?
So a sense of belonging, mattering, and contribution. And those three things are the things that really, like, so if somebody's just a helper to you, well, that's not very empowering. And it's not a really, then I'm always second guessing and wondering what it is that you want, right? I'm always second guessing and wondering what's the result I'm after. And I may or may not hit the mark if we're not in agreement about what that actually is. So when we get really clear about that with our team and we build position agreements that are very specific about the results we want people to produce, and we get agreement with our teams around that, now I'm coaching to a result. I'm managing to a result with somebody. I'm no longer just having conversations about what's the next thing they need to do.
Here's what the people listening need to hear. One, Vicki is an expert at teaching and coaching business owners how to better manage their team and to create a culture that attracts and retains. And I think it's interesting that when I gave you a wide open topic of culture, you kind of said, a lot of times people think mission, vision, or people think, well, we're going to do fun events and we've got to take them out after time, and we throw these like little tactics at it. But here's an expert, you talking about culture, and it's interesting how everybody kind of juke this way and you're jiving that way. You know how to build a great culture? Make your people feel empowered. Give them clarity on what you expect from them. Give them true responsibility where they can feel like they're contributing. I think that is just very different and contrary to the way we typically think about this. So I wanted to pause and make sure everybody heard that loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. That was a great distinction that you just made.
Are you saying thanks because I said you're an expert and she's wonderful, or because of the way I beautifully explained?
Well, I do appreciate that, Kyle, and I think that you did a nice job just in clarifying for people, what it is that the point that I was making. The thing that's really interesting about as I've done this with companies over the years, is that those companies that have first defined clear results with their team, with position agreements, and they manage people to those results, like we have a partnership, we have an agreement about these are the results of your job, and that we then secondly set up a structure for reporting and accountability around that. So it's not a do it and then leave it and it goes on a shelf kind of thing. I hold position agreements are that there's then got to be a structure set up whereby people are, there's a deliverable associated with those results. So whether that's, if I'm like, as an example, let's take a project manager as an example. So if I've got a project manager working for me.
Let's call him Jim.
Jim. All right, Jim. So Jim, the project manager, I have given him a position agreement that he has looked at, we've got an agreement about, and we've both said, yep, that's the criteria for winning the job as a project manager in my company, in our company. And Jim says, okay, great. Now, let's say that in that position agreement is that he's got to do schedules every 2 weeks, that cost to complete is done once a month, and that he has the foreman completing 2-week look-aheads every week. So let's say those are 3 of the key deliverables. By the way, I want to make a distinction here. So when I say deliverable, it's that we have set what I call SMART goals. I didn't make up that terminology. That somebody much smarter than me made up that terminology somewhere along the way. So let me tell you what SMART means. SMART means specific, it's measurable, there's clear accountability, it's realistic, and it's time-driven. So specific, measurable, there's clear accountability, it's realistic, and it's time-driven. So when you're thinking about writing position agreements or job descriptions, that you want them to be about a specific result, keep that in mind. That's actually a super helpful way to do that.
And even the examples you just gave, schedules every 2 weeks. Yep, I can measure that. Cost to complete once a month, 2-week look ahead done every week. Those are things that can be measured.
Yes.
And that are specific, all of those things.
Yes.
Good.
So,
and let me actually pause there too, because a lot of people have heard of that acronym, that SMART goal thing. And I think that's also interesting. This is even from work we've done previously and webinars we've done previously together, Vicki, is don't overlook that. Again, and I'll throw myself into the expert category in this one too. Here's 2 coaches. Here's 2 people that make their living coaching businesses. And both of us wholeheartedly agree that it is such a vital thing to make any progress in your business, or in this case, to build a good culture, that you've got to have SMART goals. And sometimes it's like, oh, I've heard that before. Yeah, but are you really following that and implementing that? That might be their takeaway from this podcast. But carry on.
Yeah, even if you just do that one thing, it's going to completely transform your culture.
Yeah.
If every time you're in a meeting that you keep a focus on when somebody says they're going to do something, whatever that goal is, keep that acronym in mind.
Yeah. So Jim's got these 3 things.
So Jim's got these 3 things. And so what the second piece of creating a culture that great people want to work for is that you set it up so that Jim and you have a regular time to go over and talk about those things. So it might be that like you have a meeting with Jim scheduled every week on Thursday morning at 7 a.m. and it's a non-negotiable. So that means that Jim doesn't get to say, well, a client had an emergency. I had to go, wanted me to come and take a look at something. I understand emergencies happen. So let's just say Jim can't say something else came up, and neither can you. So if you really want to have discipline and rigor in your business, one of the ways to build a culture that attracts really great people is great people like rigor and discipline. They like to go to work in a place where they are clear about how to win the game with you, and that they know that you're not the flavor of the week manager, right? That there's a structure and there's an environment whereby there's some rigor and discipline to what you do, so that and why? Not because everybody loves meetings, because most of us don't love meetings, but because what it does is it creates a consistency and open communication and talking about things, and that you have an agenda when you go into the meeting, and they don't go on forever, and you have certain points that you're always going to talk about. So it might be that weekly meeting is, we talk about schedule every week, we talk about 2-week look ahead every week, we talk about, whatever, right? So Jim and you have some agreement about what it is that we meet about, and it becomes a non-negotiable. What happens when
So hang on. Go ahead. Finish that.
Well, I was just going to say, what happens when you start to put that in your culture is that it becomes the culture where what you're going to find is, if you start doing just those two things with your team.
Number one
is have clearly defined position agreements where people are clear about what are the results they need to produce in their position, that let them know how to win the game with you. And they're
tied in with SMART goals. Yep.
Measurable, right.
And then two
is that you have a regular feedback loop with your team of communication about how are they doing. They're reporting to you. It's what I call, it's like going from the looking at the everyday to looking up and seeing where am I headed, and having those regular communications that are about how are you doing compared to what you said you were going to do, right? What is that? There's consistently an environment and a engagement with your team about the results that they're producing, and that you're not just abdicating to them, but that you're actually holding them accountable to a result, and then setting up the structure whereby you and them are communicating about those results.
All right. You're good cop, I'm bad cop. What you just taught, goldmine. People, listen, I had to repeat those two things because that's like 80% of it right there. So let me yell at the people listening now, because you were sweet. You explained it beautifully, professionally, wonderfully. Now I need to cause some action. I get on the phone with remodelers all the time. Kyle, my workers are calling me instead of Jim, my project manager. I don't know what to do about it. Jim's not doing, I don't know what the schedule is. I don't know this or that. Joe Remodeler, when was the last time you had a one-on-one meeting with him? I just been busy. We try. Months.
Yeah.
What you just described of set up the clear rules that we're going to play with, the clear expectations, and non-negotiable. Like you treat that appointment with your key team member just as you would a first meeting with a new prospect. And if you do those two things, if you're consistent with that, it is going to increase your productivity with them, your relationship. You're going to have a better ability to coach them and help them improve. They're going to feel better about their position. Everything's going to run smoother. And I'm sick of it. Whoops, I'm just yelling now. I'm sick of hearing whining and complaining about how hard it is to manage our team, yet we know what those two things we just said are not earth-shatteringly different things. Hopefully you heard a little bit of something different, position agreement, results, but if you would just follow those two things, it is going to make a dramatic impact. So even when you think about it, okay, over the next 30 days, I'm going to work on getting really clear with what those are, and I am not negotiable. I'm going to meet 4 times, once a week, for the next month with my key project manager, with my key designer, with my key office manager. Watch what happens. You're going to enjoy managing them better, and you're going to see progress. All right. So I just wanted to hit them with that a little bit, because if you don't do that, it's going to keep being wonky and not working well, and communication's poor. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, can I share a story about this? I was just, as I was listening to you, and I was like, oh, I have a great, perfect story that's a good example of how this can completely transform your business and your culture. I had a client who several years ago, when we first started working together, they had not taken a vacation in a few years. It was two partners. They were never out of the office at the same time. And if they had taken any time off, it was only for a day here and there. They were both exhausted, working tons of hours. They were not making the profit that they wanted. And everything in the organization went through the two of them. Like all of the decisions that got made, all the management of what happened in the field, everything in the office, everything went through the two of them. And particularly, I'm going to talk about the production person for a second. So when we first started working together, I said, so is there somebody else who can be the foreman or the superintendent for you and do some of this running around? And we started to look at their organization and how could they put in, like, define different positions within the company so that they could start to look at where do they need to develop their team so that people took ownership. And so as we did that, and then we wrote a position agreement for a foreman and a superintendent, and then they started to implement those with their team. In the process, what she started to do was, and there was this kind of this eye of the needle that she had to learn to let go of the control of micromanaging that task and this is what will happen, right? So because when she wrote the position agreements, it did not allow her, and I'll call her Jane for the sake of conversation. So Jane could not just let go of it would like write the position agreement and then go, well, now this is your job, right? So she needed to maintain some control, but not completely abdicate, right? So how do you do that? And that's where what she did is she set up regular meetings to be meeting with them, right? So she got agreement with them about the position agreement, clearly defined what the results were that they needed to produce, and then set up regular meetings with them so that they would make sure that they were both on the same page about, hey, what was working, not working, were there problems, were there issues? And she continued to, in the process of those meetings, develop and train those people to become better and better at what they did. And over time, they started being more creative and innovative about the kind of things that they did in their job. They started to bring more resourcefulness to it. And Jane started to notice that she was spending way less time running around. Jane, a few years into doing this process, she and her partner were able to take vacation at the same time for 2 weeks. Large breakdown happened while they were gone, and they did not have to stop everything, come back from their vacations. Their foreman, it was superintendent actually, handled the whole thing in their absence, kept them apprised of what was going on. And they're making more money in their business now than they have ever made. And they have told me they love what they do. Again, like they really enjoy what they do. And they have this amazing team of people who work for them. And they've grown like exponentially since we first started working together.
Because they've been able to train leaders.
Yes. And here's the cool thing is that in this environment today, where it's really hard to find good people to work for them, they have people calling them. And that's like, I go, that's creating a culture where great people want to work. In a time when the unemployment rate is super low, where it's really hard to find good people to join our teams, especially in the remodeling industry, that they have found people, they have created the kind of culture where their team feels valued, respected, heard, like they matter, like they're making a contribution. And not because they get coddled or taken out for lunches or there's parties or anything like that. And they do celebrate, I'm not saying they don't do those things, but because they've created a culture where people are clear about how to win the game, where there's discipline, there's rigor, that there's accountability. Because what happens when you create that kind of environment is it rises up the entire organization where people have more pride in what they do. And then what happens is they tell their friends, they talk to other people about it. And that's the thing that makes the phone ring. And they have an amazing reputation here in the Bay Area of being
happy employees also make clients happy. Like there's just so much,
yes.
When I, as a business owner, am able to delegate, all of a sudden I can think more strategically about the business, and that helps me grow the business. Even though I was kind of negative Nancy earlier and what I was saying, I was just trying to, set the stage. The encouraging thing in all of this is, yes, managing people is hard work, But the way that you've just kind of broken it down over the last 25 minutes into, yes, it's very hard. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes consistency. But you laid out a bit of a groundwork and step by step that sets things up for success. So that's the encouraging thing, is hopefully you've heard very clearly, kind of step by step, some things you can practically start doing, this afternoon and this week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're listening to this on Sunday, you probably don't need to call your client or your employee and be like, hey, I want to meet today. But, if it's during the week.
Yeah. One of the things too, Kyle, that I'll give you so that people can have is my outline for 6 steps for writing a great position agreement. Ooh. So that people can use that and start to have like a guide that they can use to help start to develop position agreements within their company. And maybe that'll help you as a first step.
You're so generous.
So the third, I told you that there were 3 things. So I wanted to make sure not to miss
please.
the third thing. And if you do the first 2 things, you'll create an opportunity to do this. But the third thing is giving people feedback and doing that consistently. And if you're not in the habit of doing reviews with your team, if you're not in the habit, especially because like part of what we've been talking about with the example of Jim is we're dealing with leadership roles, but everybody in your team is starved for feedback. Every time that I've put doing review processes in place with clients, I've gotten amazing feedback from their team of they are just starved for feedback to let them know how they're doing in their job. And you'd be amazed at this stuff. I hear this from my kids, like who go, I don't know if I'm doing a good job or a bad job. I think my boss hates me because he used to pay so much attention to me and now he doesn't. And I'm like, go talk to your boss. A lot of people won't do that. And you have to understand that if you're not giving them feedback, they're making up whether or not they're doing a good job. And we tend to be critical of ourselves as human beings. We tend to be more critical than others. So just know that if you're not saying anything to them, they may not be feeling very confident in what they're doing and might hesitate and be holding back. So it's also part of the thing of creating a culture where people take ownership and where people start acting more like partners than helpers is by giving them feedback on a regular basis so that they can improve, but also so they can know where they're doing a good job. So feedback isn't, it's not about always being negative. It's just about what's working, what's not working, and what would you like to have be different.
Love that.
That's just the third piece.
Love it. Hit us with all 3 again.
So the first piece of creating a culture where great people want to work is to, 1, have clearly defined position agreements or job descriptions that identify what specific results that position is accountable for, and use SMART goals as a way to do that. The second piece is to have regular accountability check-ins with your team, and that goes for all your leadership as well with their team. Accountability check-in about specific results that need to be produced on regular intervals, and hold those meetings as a priority and be consistent with them. And the third thing is that your entire team, giving them consistent feedback, even if it's every 6 months or once a year. But if there's something that's working or not working right away, it's like, address it. Don't wait. Don't let it go. Don't let it fester. Be willing to have those conversations with people. So feedback is super important in building a culture also that great people want to work for.
Love it. If you had one thing that it's like, well, okay, let me emphasize this. I'll share something after you do. If there was one thing that you kind of shared, or maybe you think of something that you didn't share related to this topic, but if it's kind of like, all right, you remodeler who was listening to this, if there's one takeaway you have from this, please take action on fill in the blank. What comes to your mind for that?
You know what? Communication with your team. I would say regular communication with your team about what's working, what's not working, and what needs to be different.
I've been on a kick lately where people will say something to me and they'll be like, I just wish I could say that they used to be really cranking and doing well, and they just have really dropped off in their performance lately. And I've been on a kick lately of saying, I got an idea. Say that.
Yeah.
Say that. Communicate. Just say that to them.
Yes.
Like
just
open,
like that.
Honest, transparent, kind, considerate, but just say it, right? Say it. So, that's Vicky Suter. I don't edit podcasts, my friend.
My apologies.
So we've got, if you're watching the video, you'll see Vicky go, oh, one second. A lot of podcasters, they'll edit that out, but Vicky is
My
like,
phone started ringing. I'm so sorry.
like my pinnacle of like professionalism, and she left her ringer on. You see mine says, do not disturb mode. I got the moon on my iPhone. Anyways, that's funny. In fact, especially because I know it probably devastated you to have that go off. I almost want to call you again to see if it happens again.
I unplugged it.
Yeah, unplugged it. I was in Bible study last night at our church, and we're studying 2 Samuel chapter 19. I was getting a little, I was kind of draining, it was draining me a little bit. It was great teaching. But I pulled up Facebook just to check on something because I had just posted something about a new course I had. I wanted to see if anything, and somehow some live video popped up, and and actually it was Joe Hughes with Contractor Dynamics started popping up. So everybody's quiet. It's like a room of God, and I'm like, oh crap, I got caught. But anyways, it happens. So, clear communication, that's your big takeaway. I think my big takeaway is you got to prioritize this. I know, guys and gals, you're busy. There's so many things to do. We need to market, we need to sell, we need to produce, all of that stuff. But managing your team needs to be number one. Before even, it's interesting to just emphasize, you need to manage your team. Even more importantly, they need more time, attention, effort, even more so than your client. Because if you manage your team well, they're going to take care of your clients. So many of you, as you've built your team, your job is not necessarily to make your client happy. Your job is to make your environment and your culture and your employees thrive so that they can make your client happy. So I kind of want to emphasize that. I just pulled it from some of what you said today. Cool. So that was great. We're going to do it again and dig into this topic. This is a topic that just needs more time and attention. We need to keep talking about it, keep encouraging you all to take action here. How can they find you? Yes, the show notes and whatnot, but how else can they find you to look you up, Vicki?
You can check out my website at suiterbusinessbuilders.com. It's SUITER businessbuilders.com. And there's all kinds of great free resources on there. You can actually get my book also for free if you just pay shipping and handling. If you go to theprofitbleed.com/free, you can get the book for, like I said, $7.95 for shipping and handling. And then as people are checking out too, there's a bundle of stuff that might help you in implementing some of what we've been talking about with your team today.
Wonderful. And I'm also going to throw a right hook here for you, which is a Gary V acronym, but is to say this topic, Vicki's got a wonderful course called Build Your Dream Team, where she walks you through this, digs through it. I've referred several clients that have gone through that course, and it's been very helpful. All right. Well, thank you very, very much, Vicki. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for having me on your show.
You bet.
I hope you found today's video helpful. If you're ready to take your next step in your leadership journey and to build a great contracting business, I encourage you to check out my book, The Profit Bleed. It's full of great tools and resources that will help you implement the processes and the systems and the structure that will allow you to build a more profitable business, allow you to work less hours, and help you reclaim the joy and fun in your business and in your life again. And for a limited time, you can get my book for free. All you have to do is pay $7.95 shipping and handling. And you simply need to go to theprofitbleed.com/free. Thanks again for joining me for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on The Profit Builder.